I want to say how heartening it was to look out last Wednesday at the First United Methodist Church of Crowley with my family as we entered into the sanctuary and see so many faces of people near and dear, so many faces of my Fort Worth family, council members, staff members, and just friends who drove out to honor my brother who passed away in a car accident in southern Erath County. He was 27 years old, and to die that way and at that age is something that's hard to understand. Cody was an amazing kid. I was 15 years old when he was born. My mom and dad tried to have kids for a number of years after they got married right out of high school. Found out that my mom wouldn't be able to, and so both my sister and I are adoptees from Edna Gladney. In fact, we were adopted when it was on Hemphill, just a few blocks from where I live today. When my mom turned 30 and my dad turned 39 and my dad turned 40, my mom proved her doctors wrong. And so Cody was quite the miracle baby, and he was a miracle in many ways. He, for someone who was so young, had such an amazing ability to tell stories. He was like you put this 60-year-old raconteur in some little kid's body, and he would just tell with earnest these just stunning stories. There wasn't a dishonest bone in his body, but he had an amazing gift for embellishment, particularly if the story was about hunting or fishing. I remember well sitting at my mother's dining room table. We'd gone in for some family meal when Cody was still very young, I mean, significantly before he could drive. And he was telling the story of killing his first deer. And he was telling it with great detail, including the dressing of the deer while we were eating. And my mom suggested to Cody that perhaps he might want to wait until after everyone was done eating before talking in such great, painful detail. And he said, well, Mother, you know that once everyone's done eating, they'll all get up from the table and there won't be anyone here to listen to my story. That was very indicative of the kind of person Cody was. But he was talented not only with his words, he was also talented with his actions. He recognized that in Crowley, with its ranching and dairy heritage, that those ranches and dairies were giving way to rooftops and Bradford pears and suburban sidewalks. And he felt that it was a shame that Crowley didn't have for its FFA program and 4-H programs an ag barn. He went out before he was even old enough to drive and found someone to donate the land and went and made a presentation to the Crowley ISD and encouraged them to build an ag barn. He helped fundraise for it, and even though he knew that he would never actually get to enjoy it as a student because it wouldn't be built while he was still a student at Crowley, he thought it was important. He continued to work on it even after his graduation, doing the plans for it, and it was built a few years after he graduated. That building stands because Cody was the one who had the idea to put that together and pushed for adults sitting behind a table to take action. The day before, a couple days before Cody's death, I was in Washington, D.C. I was invited to participate in a summit at the White House, and Cody sent me a text, and he said, I just saw you on Channel 5. And I said, well, how did I look? And he said, well, you didn't embarrass yourself too much. And that was literally the last communication I had with Cody. It was something that I will cherish. It was very much the kind of person he was. He died when he was with a couple of coworkers on the afternoon of the 12th going over a hill on a gravel road in southern Erath County. And there was a slight S-curve after the hill, and he overcompensated. His truck fishtailed and rolled. He suffered pretty significant injuries. His internal organs were ruptured, his neck was broken. Cody didn't believe in wearing seatbelts, and he was not wearing a seatbelt when he died. He, like so many of us, had heard stories that it might be better if you're thrown clear of an accident in a wreck. Well, he was thrown from the wreck. He was thrown in either the impact of the wreck itself or when the truck rolled over him, killed him. I'm not going to say that he would have walked away and lived had he worn a seatbelt, but there was a guy sitting in the front seat with him who also was in the truck that rolled. He unbuckled his seatbelt at the end of that and got out of the car. And he's walking today with nothing more than a scratch on his elbow. It's hard to find meaning in a loss like this. Someone who's 27 years old. And I don't want people to think that it was within God's plan to take Cody. God didn't cause that accident. God didn't need another cowboy in heaven and took Cody. But I do think it's within God's plan that we as human beings are compassionate and console one another through loss. And I have certainly experienced that in recent days, as has my family. And I want to thank so many of you for being there for all of us through this very difficult time. In searching for meaning, though, I do want to say, if you're someone who believes in the myth that seatbelts don't save lives, I want you to reconsider. And I want you to talk to the people that you might know who don't put on their seatbelt. Again, I don't know that Cody would be alive today if he had his seatbelt on, but I'll tell you that the guy sitting next to him literally unbuckled his seatbelt and he walked away from the wreck. The other thing I'd like to add is when I was in D.C., I got done at the White House and I thought, this is such an amazing thing that I just got to be in a room with the president and the first lady and all these folks. I had senators sitting on both sides of me, and it was this great experience. And when I was done, I called my mom and dad, and then I also talked to my sister, and I was going to call Cody, and I thought, you know what, I'll call him this weekend. I've got to get off to this next appointment, next interview. And I want to be clear, Cody and I were complete. We were, even though we were incredibly different, we were close, and I knew that he knew that I loved him, and I knew that he loved me and JD, and so there wasn't anything lacking there. But man, would I give anything to have that 5-minute phone conversation that I didn't have, that I put off for a couple of days. So if there is one other thing other than wearing your seatbelts to take from this, I would encourage you, if there's someone that it would just break your heart to go through life without having that 5-minute conversation with, when this meeting's over, you should give them a call. Cody's life was an incredible one. And I will miss him every day. I will miss him on happy days, and I will miss him on sad days. He was indeed a miracle. And I thank everyone for your support in the recent days in his loss. Thank you.
Joel, I think all of us, certainly at this dais and extended Fort Worth family, can only imagine the extent of your loss. As you always seem to do, is you take a negative and you try to add a lesson. And whether that lesson is seatbelts, or whether it's bullying, or whether it's contacting a loved one or someone you care about while you're thinking about it and not as an afterthought. That is something I think we all appreciate about you. As we adjourn today, we will do so in Cody's honor. And we all extend our prayers. Members, this completes the business before the council today. As we mentioned earlier in pre-council, today as we recess, as we adjourn, we do so in memory of the younger brother of one of our colleagues, Joel Burns. Cody Allen Burns died at the age of 27 as a result of injuries sustained during an automobile accident in Parker County. He was the son of Robert Butch Burns and Jeanette Burns, and as I indicated, brother of my council colleague, Councilmember Joel Burns. Cody was raised in Crowley. He was a 2002 Crowley High School graduate. He attended Weatherford College and my alma mater, Tarleton State University in Stephenville. He worked for the Lone Oak Cattle Company. He was a Christian cowboy, and he earned the loyalty and admiration of all he encountered, especially his fellow cowboys and co-workers. His skill and work ethic were recognized by earning the Lone Star FFA degree and the American FFA degree, the organization's highest honors. His heart always called him away from the city lights to his love and respect for nature, for animals, and the reward of making a living on his horse. Cody was an avid hunter and fisherman. He shared his love of the outdoors by inviting others along, teaching or through stories of his adventures with friends as well as family. We can remember Cody with donations to the Cody Burns FFA Scholarship Fund at P.O. Box 371, Crowley, 76036, and/or the Crowley First United Methodist Church Building Fund. So today, as we adjourn, we do so in Cody's memory and with deepest respect, and our prayers to our colleague and his family. We stand adjourned.